Lori Vober suffered a massive stroke at age 29, which left her paralyzed on the left side. After a 2-month stay in the hospital where she had two brain surgeries, she returned home, and then her husband lost his job in the aviation industry due to the effects of 9/11. A cross-country move was necessary while Lori was still in a wheelchair. And Lori also has developed epilepsy from the stroke and lost more independence. Lori is an amazing woman, and you are going to appreciate and enjoy her story, which will definitely encourage you.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Today I have Lori Vober with me, who's going to share an incredible story as we started to tell you in the intro. Now, 7 years later, Lori and her husband were able to adopt 3 siblings. This really excited me when I read that, Lori. 2 of them with mental illnesses. So you have a lot of area to cover here, and we want to hear the full story. So please start from the beginning and share your story.
Oh, thank you so much, Carol. I really appreciate you having me on today. So my story started, like you said, when I was just 29, and luckily I had a very strong faith prior to my stroke, and God always has a plan for each of us. Sometimes we don't know what that plan is, and prior to my stroke, my husband and I were trying to start our own family and had not yet been successful. We were both employed in the airline industry. My background was marketing and sales, and we both worked for Northwest Airlines at the time, and I was doing a lot of traveling. And prior to my stroke, I had received an opportunity at our church. I was already the wedding and special events coordinator at our church, and they came to me and asked if I wanted to take over as the office manager. And because we were struggling to start our family, we decided that that might help with our family planning. So in January of 2003, I chose to change my career and go to the church and make that transition. And we thought at the time the change in career would help our family planning. What turned out was God was making that choice for us to save my life, because what happened was 3 weeks later on a Friday, and normally, as many people know, churches are shut down on Fridays and with minimal staff, because that's the day usually pastoral staff take the day off. I was usually alone in the church, but this particular Friday, I had a coworker working with me, and I had a women's Bible study going on down the hall. Was the day I had my massive stroke. And so I wasn't feeling well early in the day, but I was not aware of the signs of the stroke like I should have been. I was only 29. I thought I was healthy. I started feeling sick to my stomach, had a headache, but like I said, I didn't know the signs. I wasn't aware, and I just was ignoring it until it was almost too late. I was sitting at my chair in the office, and my leg started going numb, and that was when I reached out to my husband. I reached out to my parents, who had actually moved from Texas to Minnesota 18 months prior to be closer to us, and they knew right away something was wrong and came to the church, and we called 911, and they rushed me to the hospital hospital, and I was actually unconscious by the time we reached the ambulance, and I went through a 5-hour brain surgery that night to stop the bleed. And the stroke was caused by a malformation of blood vessels on the right side of my brain. It was undetected. It was something I was born with, but no one knew I had. And the malformation caused bleed, and so it ruptured, and so the emergency brain surgery was to stop the bleed, and I woke up 17 days later out of a drug-induced coma off life support, completely paralyzed on the left side. And we learned very quickly that in the blink of an eye, your life can change, and
Right.
we literally had to start all over and take it one step at a time in a new direction.
Yes, you put that in a capsule, and I love the way you shared that part of your story. What was the emotional state that you were in? Were you in fear? Were you anxious? Were you calm? And also those around you, your parents, your husband. How did this play out emotionally for everything that was going on at that time?
That is a wonderful question. I think everybody had different emotions, and God protected me wonderfully in the fact that He kept me extremely calm and protected throughout the whole process, because I did not realize how devastating the stroke was and what
Mm,
the outcome was. And he did a wonderful job protecting me from that. And my parents and my husband did a wonderful job protecting me from that also, I believe. I'm an only child, so this was devastating, obviously, to my parents.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
they definitely took a devastating emotional toll on this, especially my mom. She never left my side. She was the one that stayed by me from the very beginning, and was there to answer all the questions from the doctors, and was kind of the rock that held everything together, as most moms are. She definitely was the one that was there for me every step of the way. And at the same time, I'm a very independent person, so that was very hard for me to have to let go of that independence. The other thing that God did, though, along the way, from the time the stroke happened on, is I always liked to exercise a lot. So the one thing I think He really did to protect me mentally and emotionally is I looked at this as a physical, not an emotional issue. So for some reason, I just kept thinking, okay, if I can exercise and rehab through this, somehow, miraculously, I'm going to get better. And I don't know where I got that from, but somehow I just kept thinking, if I keep pushing hard enough on the exercise level, eventually this has got to get better. So that was my focus. And so I think God protected me from ever emotionally or mentally breaking down because of that focus. Now, I have to say, God is an amazing God in the fact that He gave me the husband He gave me, knowing that we were going to go through this. My husband grew up with a mom that was diagnosed with cancer early on in his life. She passed away, unfortunately, a month before we met. She battled a hormonal cancer for 16 years. So he basically grew up watching a dad take care of a mom almost his whole life. Now, we did not realize when we got married that we were going to face this challenge in our own marriage, but God did. And so when I moved from Oklahoma to Minnesota, I moved there for my career, met my husband Danis at church, and we were only dating 6 weeks before he asked me to marry him. And so I had no idea that God was planting this marriage the way He did, but I believe He planted Danis in my life because He knew one day I was going to need a godly mate that understood what it was going to be like to take care of a wife that had medical challenges, and he innately knew from watching his dad take care of his mom what that was going to take. And so he was ready to step up to the plate and take care of me. And so he did. He he had a hard time at the very beginning reacting because
Mm.
I think it hit home real quick. Oh my goodness, this is happening
Right,
to
right.
me. But as time progressed, he really stepped in and he never faltered in his wedding vows, never thought about, walking away. And every step of the way, he was by my side. And there was not easy days, but we were in it for the long haul, and we were just shy of our 5th year wedding anniversary when this happened. So, we weren't newlyweds, but we weren't very
Right,
far into
right,
our
right.
our, our marriage.
His heart was already molded as a young child to protect you, to help you. Wow, that's wonderful.
Yes. Oh,
Like
I'm
you said,
so
it
grateful.
was
Yes,
ordained. Absolutely,
yes,
hon. Many
yes.
men would have walked away, and I certainly have interviewed people where that had happened, where they cannot cope with what happened to their spouse or their child very often as well. I appreciate that from your heart to mine, and also I know the audience will.
Yes, because I know how much we have missed having his mom in our lives,
Yes,
and
exactly.
that is a loss that you just never can get back. But I am so grateful to his dad for innately teaching
Mm-hmm,
him
mm-hmm.
those skills
That's right.
that he has.
Exactly. Continue. You left the hospital then, and what happened?
Yes, so we left the hospital. We went to live with my parents because our house had too many stairs. And so I actually never went back to our original house. That was our first house. It was a very special house because his mom actually helped him pick out the land for that house that
Mm,
he actually built. And so unfortunately, we never were able to go back to that house. We went to live with my parents because their house was more conducive to the environment, and they became my main caregivers while my husband went to work. I was still going back to the hospital for therapy every day, even though I was home. I was an outpatient in therapy. And I did not realize that the airline industry was in such destruction as it was from
mm.
the September 11th terrorist attacks, but it was. And slowly his job became in jeopardy. And it was 2 months after my hospital discharge
Oh
that
my
he
goodness.
eventually lost his job as an aircraft mechanic. So we went from thinking we were doing great, we were traveling around the world, we were trying to start our own family, living the great life, to and two incomes to absolutely no incomes, and me completely disabled and wondering what we were going to do next. But God always has a plan, and even when you don't think you know what you're going to do, he shows up. And so Dana's happened to wear a Northwest jacket to the grocery store one night to pick up some groceries, and a gentleman approached him in the banana aisle. So we call it our banana moment, but really it's our God moment. And he said, "Do you know a manager that worked at Northwest Airlines that happened to be one of his managers that used to work there? And this manager used to be this stranger's neighbor who moved to Arizona to start an aviation maintenance facility here in Arizona. And so within a week, my husband had reached out to this manager in Arizona. Long story short, he had a new job. We picked up all of our families, myself, my husband, and my parents. We sold both houses, and by summer, we were relocated to Arizona. So it was a whirlwind, but where God has plans and He has a way, there's no stopping Him. So that's where we ended up. And God said, "You know what? Yes, I brought you to Arizona for your husband and a job, but I really brought you here for your recovery." And
Mm.
so no
Ah,
sooner did we get here, we found the most fabulous neuro rehab center for me in Phoenix. It was just opening, and I was one of their first set of patients. It's called Swan Rehab, and it really skyrocketed my therapy. In Minnesota at the time, back in 2003, I had wonderful therapists. However, medicine is not where it is today. And back then, they were of the impression if you do not get back what you want within 6 months, go be happy where your life is, and that's where you're going to be. And at that time, I was now 30 years old, and I was not happy in a wheelchair with just using one side of my body. And this new philosophy here at this new rehab center was completely different. They were all about the neuroplasticity of the brain, which basically means that your brain can relearn and does have the ability to relearn through a lot of repetition. It's kind of like I say it's like playing the piano. It's a lot of doing the same exercise over and over and over again. This therapy was built on many repetitions and hours. So I basically threw myself into this therapy program. It was an all-day program for 4 weeks, is how the program originally started. And I took the next 7 years and said, this will be my next full-time job. And I worked 6 to 8 hours a day to get my life back and my mobility back. And I did that. And so that was, I did, when I wasn't at the clinic, I did it at home and set up my own therapy room. I was the youngest person at the Silver Sneakers program at the YMCA. And I did everything I could and everything my therapist told me to do, either at the clinic or at home, to get better. And it worked. I still have a disability today, but I am independent, and I can drive, and I can do everything I need to do to functionally independently.
Is your middle name Tenacious?
I'm so grateful that God gave me the positive attitude He gave me and the perseverance He gave me prior to the stroke, because those are the two traits that have carried me through
Right.
so well. I really am grateful for those two traits, because they have served me well since the stroke, and it's what keeps me going today.
Well, we certainly are appreciating what you are sharing as far as your story, and we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we want to hear about your adopted children, what you have learned, how this can help us, and your book. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Lori Vober is sharing her story today with us on Never Ever Give Up Hope. She is the poster girl for this show. My goodness, never giving up no matter what is thrown at her. And as you've been listening, I'm sure you're wondering what happened next. So Lori is now going to share what she learned, and also that they were able to have a family. So Lori, take it away. What have you
Oh,
learned through this experience that the audience needs to hear?
Oh, I've learned so much, Carol. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your audience so much. I've learned definitely never to give up. Always persevere, always have a positive attitude, always keep your eyes on God, always keep your faith strong, and always, when you think that there's not a solution, there's a solution. So keep looking for your options. There's always someone out there willing to help you, and there's always opportunities to grow and to learn. And no matter what your struggle is, keep going, because there truly is a solution. Sometimes you just have to think outside the box.
Right, that's what you did when you decided to have a family.
Yes, yes. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, we were trying to start our family prior to the stroke. And so I worked really hard the first 7 years, and that took us to 2010. And we decided at that point we were really at a crossroads. We could either continue the same route and continue with therapy. We could do nothing and continue with travel and the life that we had prior to the stroke. We had always supported Compassion International as an organization and supported 4 children. And so we'd always had a heart and a love for supporting children and had children in our lives that way. And so that dream of having children in our lives had never died. And so with the stroke and the medicine, and I had developed epilepsy from the stroke and the scar tissue, we were really quite concerned about the my health of having our own biological children. We decided to look into adoption and what that would look like and if that would be a viable option. Based on where we lived in Arizona and the environment, and my dad worked in the telecommunications industry and was very familiar with the Latino community, we decided to venture into international adoption and chose Colombia, South America as our choice. My husband and I were both only children, and so we had this grand idea that we wanted a larger family. We had the skewed idea of what siblings were like because we were both only children. So we decided when we wanted to adopt that we wanted to adopt a sibling group. So we decided in 2010 to proceed with an adoption of a sibling group. And so God led us to an adoption of 3. And so in 2011, we traveled to Colombia, South America, and we were united with our 3 kids, and that was
Hmm.
2 daughters and a son. And at the time, they were ages 6, 8, and 10.
What an undertaking.
It
Wow.
was. We didn't realize at the time. I say we adopted with love blinders on, and it's been a journey of both blessings and challenges. And
Of
I think a
course.
lot of times God puts those blinders on because otherwise maybe we wouldn't jump in the way we do.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Yes.
So tell us, maybe share a little bit about that experience.
Yes. So, it definitely fulfilled the journey of being able to be a family. We've learned a lot about what we wish we had known ahead of time. We've learned a lot about uh, of what it takes to be a parent. I'm grateful to my children that they've allowed me to be a mom and have had that opportunity. It has not been the easiest journey. It's like any journey in life, whether it's a medical journey, whether it's a husband-wife journey, whether it's a parenting journey. You never know what you don't know until you get involved, and it's just that's just part of it. And
Right,
so,
right.
I say at this point that God has given me medical challenges and the challenges I have gone through with my kids, so that I can now take these experiences and help others. And I truly believe that I'm at a point now that God has given me these experiences to truly be a hope and encouragement to others, because you know anytime we experience things in life, we have a choice of what we're going to do with them. And could it have been easier? Yes, but if everything in life is easy, then we don't have room to grow. And so at this stage, we do the best we can with what we're given, and we learn from it and we grow from it. And so there's been some wonderful moments and some great moments and some wonderful blessings, and there's been some great challenges, and that's just because they've had trauma and abandonment and
Yes,
mental challenges
yes.
that we weren't aware of at the time, and that we couldn't help, but we're loving them through them and supporting them through them, and they have a forever family that they would have never had before, and we take it one step at a time.
Well, no one can say it's been a boring journey.
That's true. That is very true.
Tell us about your book. Is it a memoir? And is it your full story? Tell us about your book.
Yes. So I had talked before about writing a book, and I always thought when I wrote my book, it might be a book about my stroke. And so God came to me with the idea of writing a book right in the middle of the pandemic. And when I told my husband I was going to write a book, he literally chuckled and said, "Well, I've heard this one before." And I said, "No, really, I really am going to write a book this time." And I started typing, and he would come through at night and say, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I told you, I'm writing my book." And he would just walk through at night and say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I told you, I'm writing my book." And slowly, chapter by chapter, my book unfolded, and it completely turned out to be a different book than I ever
Oh my
expected it to
goodness.
be. It is not a stroke book. It is a book about our life. So in a way, it is a memoir, but it more is just a book about. Um, uh, it's called Choices. When you're faced with a challenge, what choice will you make? And what
Mm,
it really turned out to be is a book about the different aspects of our life and what we've gone through, from the stroke to the epilepsy to the job losses to the move to the adoption and parenting and homeschooling that experiences, to natural consequences, what we've learned, what we've gone through. And really, in the end, it's a book for anybody, because whether you faced a challenge very small or huge, we all face challenges in life. And
right.
one of my biggest messages is life rarely turns out exactly like we picture it's going to. But when we face challenges, we have a decision to make of how are we going to react to those challenges, how are
That's
we going
right.
to react to our circumstances, and what choice we're going to make and what attitude we are going to take, and how we're going to live our life.
I was going to ask what the message was for the audience today, but you pretty well just covered it. And that's an excellent message. And it's one that will, if you maintain that attitude, like you said, even, when things are not going your way. Want to speak to that a little bit?
It's not always easy, and I don't always have the most positive attitude, and I do have times that I'm negative, and I'm sad, but I think that's when we turn to God, and we try and learn from what's going on and find the purpose. And I think I have learned so much about turning to Him and finding what is the purpose in each and everything that we're going through, and that is what's pulled me through, is finding the purpose in each and everything that we're going through, and finding the silver lining, and that's just what helps pull me through.
In the last minute, you mentioned the word going through 3 times. And I think that is very important because you're not staying there. You're going through.
Yes,
You're
yes,
moving forward. And that is what your book is about. Not staying where you are, but going through, moving forward, and helping everybody that you can along the way. I'm sure that you have been a tremendous inspiration, not just as a speaker, and also you're sharing your story on many different platforms, and your book, which is available at Barnes and Noble. It's available on Amazon. It's available on your website. And once again, anything else you would like to say in conclusion, and tell us the name of your book again.
yes. I would just like to end by saying one of my favorite verses that I've come to depend on is Proverbs 19:21, that says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails." And that's because I've learned that God always has a plan. So don't ever give up, even if you have to just take things one step at a time. Learn to depend on Him, because sometimes when you can't see it, He does have a purpose that is even greater than we can even see. And again, the name of my book is Choices. When you're faced with a challenge, what choice will you make?
And thank you again, Lori Vober, for being on Never, Ever, Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.